A very good afternoon and welcome to the Fixed Wing Guide channel with me, Stuart Lomas. Still a gorgeous, gorgeous day here in Manchester, you'll be pleased to hear. A good day to visit if you're ever coming this neck of the woods. And apparently it's going to be nice all over the weekend, but back to normal on Monday with a little bit of rain. Now, if you're here looking for Watch Chat today, I'm afraid you may as well turn off now, and I may bore a lot of you, absolutely senseless. But I've had a couple of requests stroke comments to kind of expand on my interests of other things in life. And one of them is the mysteries of the universe, and I know that's a massive subject, and I know most of you are thinking, oh my giddy aunt, what is he talking about? Well, I'll try and kind of make it as interesting as I can. So let's start off kind of right from the beginning. I've been a science fiction fan for as long as I can remember. Not so much Doctor Who, although you would anticipate that that would be my main interest coming from Britain. Although I do have my favourite Doctor, who was John Pertwee. But I was always more Star Trek and the Gerry Anderson type programs, which I've discussed when I did my video about the rehashing of Thunderbirds. And it is my firm belief that things would never become science fact without science fiction. And I don't mean that the programs that are made spawn ideas particularly. What I'm trying to get at here is that a lot of the theoretical physicists and a lot of the cosmologists and even a lot of the people who make and design technology would never get to where they are now had it not been for Ray Bradbury and Arthur C. Clarke and people like that who've written very, very influential books on the subject and made influential films about space travel, time travel, so on and so forth. So being from the age of about 6 or 7, I was captured by Star Trek and the technology therein. And in about 1975, I think it was, an American cosmologist called Carl Sagan did a program which the BBC bought called Cosmos, which was about the wonders of the universe, how in his opinion it was built, what caused the Big Bang, what effect the Big Bang had on the expansion of the universe, whether there is the added theory of not only the Big Bang theory but the Big Crush theory. Now, obviously, because we're talking about life, and I don't mean life, I mean kind of life out there and planetary development and things on a massive scale here, it's probably quite important to chop this down into little bits. I will come back to my feelings regarding the Big Bang on another video, because as arrogant as this is going to sound, I'm actually not happy with it. I'm not happy with the Big Bang, and I will explain that in another video. Anyway, what I want to talk about today is something called M theory. M theory, for those of you who don't know, and I apologise if I am teaching you to suck eggs here. M theory is a shortened scientific term for multiverse theories. Now, we're all aware of universe, uni being one, as when we talk about watches and you talk about bezels, it has a unidirectional bezel. And the theory has always been, or the belief has always been, that there is just one and one only universe, and that is the one that we can observe, although we can only observe a relatively tiny little bit of the observable universe. And this is obviously part of the problem with being stuck to one edge of a spiral galaxy. We are, because of the crowded nature of space, because of the lack of technology as yet, apart from the recent developments of Hubble and the Kepler telescopes, of course. We are restricted greatly in what we're able to see. I mean, for God's sake, even if you believe that the Americans had a space program that was successful in going to the moon, we've only been to the moon, 220,000 miles away. So we've hardly stepped off our front doorstep, as it were. So when you're talking about cosmology, things have to be so big because that is the nature of the things. But M-theory is quite an interesting one because it's something that's kind of gained traction over the last 20 years, 25 years. Before that, it was one of those things that was sneered at by the scientific elite. Multiverse theory, as the name suggests, seems to suggest that there could be multiple universes, multiverses out there, which kind of helps quite a lot if you think about it, about the belief of a lot of people that there are other life forms out there, not necessarily like us, not necessarily air breathing, not necessarily with arms and legs, not, it doesn't, when we talk about life forms, so many people think that we're talking about things like us, and that's not the case at all. Anyway, the subject for another video. Multiverse theory is quite an interesting one because there's a couple of thoughts on multiverses. One which was muted, I think, in the late 70s by Stephen Hawking, which was bubble theory. Now, bubble theory was quite interesting because it harked back to a really old belief, an African tribal belief, that where we lived was in a bubble. And what we saw when you looked up from where you lived was the inside of the bubble, and that was a version of the reflections from the surface on which you lived, plus stars and shiny things that the gods that they believed in had created for mankind. That over the years has kind of been expanded because it seems obvious to cosmologists over the years that there can't be just us. And the reason that it feels as though it's just us is because we live in a sphere, and our observable universe, if you like, is the inside of this spherical shell. Hence why we find it so difficult to observe anything beyond a certain distance, because we are restricted in this little bubble, as it were. But once people started talking about multiverse theories, it became a favoured theory that not only was there one bubble, but there were multiple bubbles. All those bubbles would encapsulate a completely separate universe. And all those completely separate universes, and this is where it gets a little bit strange, is that years ago there was a scientist called Feynman who conducted an experiment using light beams going through a slotted piece of card. And obviously light beams are made of photons, and as they go through the slot, you would anticipate that they would all hit the same place, which was a target on a wall or wherever. And what he found was that, in complete contradiction to that, was that these photons, little dots of light energy, if you will, went all over the place, and they were splitting into two different things and hitting in different places. And these things he christened, he put his own little name on, called buckyballs. And he came to the conclusion that a light particle, a photon, could, in theory, live in two different places in space at the same time. So you've got what essentially contradicts what everything that you would believe, that if you fire at potentially, let's say, a bullet, that bullet is going to leave one hole in a target. What he found was completely the opposite of that. It would leave multiple holes. So if that is the case, multiverse theory spawned a number of questions from that, and a number of answers came along, which was, if multiverse theory exists, then is it possible that there are numbers of us, you and I, and we live in different multiverses? So in effect, every multiverse is the same. It will appear the same, the buildings are the same, people drive the same cars, so on and so forth. But the theory is that in each one of the multiverses, every one of us lives every option of our lives that we could have possibly lived. Let me try and explain that. There's a movie called Sliding Doors. You may have seen it with Gwyneth Paltrow. Good film, interesting film. And it shows how slight changes in her life or slight changes in her habits changed outcomes of her life. It's like a butterfly effect, which is quite another good film. Watch that if you've not seen it. And what multiverse theory says is that I, you, everybody else has, for want of a better phrase, a doppelganger, another one of us that lives in all these multiverses, and we are all living every possible aspect of every possible life we could have possibly ever had in our lives. So if you're sitting there now thinking, you know, if I tried a bit harder at school, I could have been a brain surgeon. Well, in another universe, you are. That's exactly what you are. In another universe, you're a rocket scientist. In another universe, you're a drunk and you're living on the streets. You know, you get the picture. So, multiverse theory is quite an interesting one, because it would explain that encapsulating everything that life can throw up and all these things that we can't explain, things like deja vu, and what they say about deja vu is, you know, you'll walk into a building or you'll see a group and you think, God, that's really strange, that feels really familiar. And what they think about does occasionally happen is that multiverses can pop up literally for fractions of a second in other universes. And what they think is that these bubble verses are popping up in our universe all the time, every minute of every day. So the feeling of deja vu you get, for want of a better explanation, is the collision of your existence with a collision of another one of your existences, and that other existence has already done what you're about to do or what you're doing at that minute in time. So you're thinking, wow, this feels so familiar, and that's what they think is happening with the bubbleverse thing. So quite an interesting one. And something else that Stephen Hawking said was that, you know, we've got this thing going on about black holes and wormholes and things like that, and they have no idea, apart from it being a very destructive force, whether these things actually go anywhere. Stephen Hawking seemed to think that it was reasonable to assume that a wormhole or a black hole was actually a conduit between bubble verses. So if we had the technology, the spacecraft and the balls to travel through a black hole or a wormhole, it would take us at the other end to another universe. Now, I quite like that idea. That kind of holds water with me if the bubble theory is true. So we won't know, of course, until somebody either physically pilots a spacecraft through a black hole or a wormhole, or we send some form of robotic droid ship, as it were, through said wormhole. Now, the other aspect of multiverse theory that somebody's come up with is dimensional confluence, as it were, which is what people are now thinking is that we live in dimensions, as we're all aware. We live in a three-dimensional world, you know, which is up, down, right, left, and diagonally, so that we get a fair idea of how something feels. You know, a pair of glasses feels real because it is real. It's you know, it's there, and we can view it from all angles. Why is that? Because we live in a three-dimensional world. Scientists are now thinking that we could live in anything up to an 11-dimension world, or an 11-dimension universe, to be more specific. And how they vision that is that in the cosmos, that there are what they're calling sheets. So if you can imagine, you know, like the obelisk in 2001: A Space Odyssey, got 11 of those. And all the universes live on both sides of those sheets. And each one of those 11 sheets is a different dimension. So you've got, you know, as the ones that I've mentioned, up and down, left and right, back and forth, so on and forth. Fourth dimension, of course, is time. But we have no idea what the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th dimensions are yet. Because, to be perfectly honest, we're not clever enough. So all that has got to come. So the multiverse theory is actually quite a convoluted thing, because as is the case so readily in cosmology, it's all theoretical physics. It's something that is possible in mathematics, but not really provable in the real world. But to wrap your head around it, your mind has got to be open to the possibility that there has got to be more than this, more than the solid world that we're aware of. And there are so many people in this world of ours who refuse to believe that, which is actually quite sad. The other problem comes about, of course, is that you've got a fair chunk of the population who believe in creationism. Now, I'm kind of with and kind of not with creationism, I have to say, because I don't believe that there is one almighty God. And I apologise if any of you guys out there do, and I am sorry. And I don't believe that he looked down upon us and waved his mighty hand and created us all out of nothingness. But I do kind of believe that we've kind of been manufactured. Could it be the case that all the people that we see who say that they have been abducted for many, many years, who've all got the same story, have all got missing time, is it possible that, you know, we have been visited for many years, and that once we were visited before there was a humanoid existence here on the planet, and that people came down and, to use a biblical term, designed us in their own image? Is that possible? And I'm not saying that these people are interstellar travellers. These people may well be interdimensional travellers. So they've come from another dimension that we, right now, are not even aware of, because it's so beyond who we are and what we are, because we are so young as a species. So M-theory is a fairly young theory. It is a very interesting theory, because if it proves to be correct, there is no reason to believe, if the bubble theory connected by conduits, it couldn't hold water, that we are being visited by other people because they have found a way to travel from bubble to bubble. And if indeed it proves that there are these sheets in space, as it were, with each one representing a different dimension, totaling 11, with all the little universes attached to each side of these sheets. So we would live on, obviously, sheet number 3, because we live in a three-dimensional universe as we perceive it. What's going on in all the others? And how boring must life be on sheet 1 when you live in a one-dimensional universe? How boring would that be? You know, because there'd be no depth perception. You know, you may get hold of things and feel them and wonder at how lovely they feel. You just couldn't do that. So, in a kind of very, very small nutshell, that's M theory. It's about people who are far cleverer than I postulating that there could be multiple universes which seems to hold water when we find it so hard to see out there, to see what else there is. And I'm saying that could be just because we're lacking technology right now, or it could be that we live in a bubble and we can only see the inside of our bubble. And sometimes that view is like living in a fogged up internal of a ping pong ball, because you're blinded. You know there's stuff out there, but you can't see it because that's all there is. There's this fog, and until we can get by that fog by means of technology, telescopes, space-based telescopes, or actual space exploration, we're never going to know. So, you know, we're 20 minutes in, and I've hardly scratched the surface, but I'm trying to get, you know, I've had a couple of requests to do things about more out there stuff, and I'm quite happy with that, because I'm completely enraptured by things that seem unexplainable. Anyway, I'll sign out of this one now. I will come back to all sorts of things like string theory and the Big Bang and space travel and my opinion on the moon landings and all that kind of thing. If I've not covered what you wanted me to cover in this, because you know, it's such a huge subject, drop me a note down below. If there's anything you want me to talk about, drop me a note down below. If you disagree, you know, if you do believe, you know, that the world was created, you know, less than 6,000 years ago, then by all means let me know. Let me say before you do that, that if you have a faith and that faith gives you strength, then I'm a great supporter of you, because there is nothing finer than having something that you believe in that gives you spiritual strength and well-being. It's, I do not damn your faith, I just do not believe that there is one almighty person up there looking down on us, who, if you believe the Old Testament, was actually quite a vengeful guy. Anyway, that's it for this one. I will speak to you again, and I do sincerely look forward to your comments. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.